Yo, what's up, guys? Necrit has a brand new video he just dropped. A follow-up to his last one. He's going to show us races and classes now to follow up on that lore video we watched earlier. So let's check this one out.
Into the other big MMO topic.
Here we go.
Well, I'm back. Last time we had a look at the world of Riot's MMO, and we talked about how the overall world design has been done for a few years now. If you have no idea what League's universe is about, I would recommend watching that one first. But now that we learned about the basics, we can dive into the other big MMO topic, the playable races and classes. When it comes to the races, just like the world, they are pretty much done. Over the years, the lore fleshed out the races of Runeterra, and now they each have their own unique story. In fact, at this point, it feels like we know Riot will not make up a brand new race. Of course, they could always theoretically do it, but I seriously doubt they would. Because that would be like forcing a new race into the world of Lord of the Rings. It would feel off among all the already established rules. I strongly doubt you wanna put a bunny person next to Aragorn. With that said, don't worry, because the lore will allow Riot to make up new races and make them feel natural. I'll show you their clever system in just a moment.
Okay.
But for now, just know that yes, we already know the races of this world. So the question is not going to be what races Riot is going to make up. The question is going to be, from the races that already exist, which ones will be playable? And perhaps more importantly, how will they be playable? You see, a few years back I released a similar video where we talked about the classes and the races together with TB Skyen. And today, I would not recommend you watch that video. Back then, I was still clinging onto the idea that faction-based MMOs were a good idea. It worked for WoW, and it worked for my guilty pleasure, WildStar. Unfortunately, what I didn't know is that merely a year later, the idea of faction-based MMOs would crumble to dust. That's because factions have a massive flaw. Besides the fact that PvP is almost guaranteed to be one-sided. I mean, who would want to play for the losing side? Especially if there is no compensation.
Exactly what I said
Classic
on the
WoW
last video.
A perfect proof of that. Not to mention New World. But also, if you split everyone into two sides, you are splitting up your player base. And that is almost never a good idea. You simply don't want to prevent people from playing together.
It never works out the way you want. It's just never going to be even.
The reason why in the past it worked for WoW is because Blizzard heavily played into the faction pride. People were proud to fight for the Horde or the Alliance. But even back then, it really wasn't perfect.
I was going to say...
And then people started min-maxing the game and they realized that factions didn't matter.
It wasn't like... It wasn't... you know... It's gotten worse over time, but it's like it's never been even. You know what I mean? Like some servers were lucky enough to be even, but it was never really even and just got worse and worse over time. Like even if you start off on the right foot, eventually players are just going to like, I think, funnel into one faction or the other because, you know, once the player base kind of decides everyone's playing on one or the other, it's like no one wants to play for the losing side. No one wants to play for the less popular side because there's just going to be less people to meet, less people to play with, less people to recruit, you know what I mean? Less guilds to get recruited by. It's just harder to play.
And that's where Riot has the edge. You may know that League of Legends has a lot of different regions, where they all act independently and they all have unique relationships with their neighbors. Because of this, forcing faction alliances into this world would ruin the already
I don't think there will be
established
factions.
war. So
at least not like
factions
as
are most likely
factions.
not going to be a thing.
You know?
However, despite that, League absolutely has faction pride. People love it when a new Shuriman champion is announced because people love that place. And people love it when the new champion is not Ionian because goddamn we have too many Ionians. Nearly every League of Legends player has a favorite region. And you bet when the MMO comes out, people will want to play for that region. And this is where the brilliance of Riot's world kicks in. You see, the fundamental lore of League of Legends is based around the idea that anyone can be from any region. After an event, the story refers to as the westward migration, races mixed up all around the world. So it's not like there is a furry region where you can only see furries. There are definitely regions where you can see more
True.
furries, but this world doesn't have exclusives. This means that when you're picking up what you want to play, besides just picking a race and a class combination, I strongly suggest Riot also allows people to pick their origin,
Yeah.
with the origin being the starting region. Without a system like this, you would force all human champions to be, for example, Noxian. And
Yeah.
that is simply not how this world works.
True.
So, I've been rambling about how this world works for quite...
Yeah, it's not like in Warcraft, for instance, where all the races are sort of tied to, like, you know, the same origin. You know, like if you're a dwarf, you have to be a dwarf from Dunmorrow, you know, fighting for the Bronzebeards, fighting for the Alliance. You know, if you're undead, you have to be part of the Forsaken, part of like, you know, Sylvanas', you know, army, right? But it's like in this game, what if you pick human? It's like, well, there's humans all over the place, you know. If you pick Yordle, well, there's Yordles all over the place for different factions. If you pick, you know, Vastaya or whatever, right? So that's actually true. You could have almost a third element. I feel like usually it's like you pick your class and you pick your race, but it's like that would be actually really cool if they did class, race, but also you pick your origin, like you said. You know, your origin's not determined by your race or your class. It's like they're all three independent. It adds a whole nother like degree of freedom for like customizing your character. That's actually really cool.
quite
Good
a
idea.
while. So now, let's actually dive into all the races that exist in this universe. Spoiler alert, League doesn't have too many different races, because it's focusing on depth over variety.
Yeah.
Of course, as it is with
It seems
any
like it's
RPG,
mostly
there
humans.
is the human race.
Of course.
But it would be cool if the humans varied depending on their origins. For
Yeah.
example, if you pick a human from the Freljord, they would be an Iceborn and they would have extra frost resistance.
Okay.
A Demacian could have a bit more magic resistance, Ionians could have a bit more nature resistance, Shuriman's heat resistance, and so on. I think it's going to be crucial for Riot to preserve the feeling of every origin feeling at least slightly different. This is an RPG after all, and despite the fact that balancing is usually a big issue, I strongly believe these RPG elements have to be preserved. But if Riot is afraid of people min-maxing the game from the very beginning, focusing on the origin stat with the most value, Riot can always do the safe thing and only give each origin different customization. In the Freljord, people tend to be more pale with lush beards and Nordic tattoos all over their bodies. Shurimans have the classic dreadlock style. People from Bilgewater have the pirate crew tattoos. Piltovans are your fancy mustache people. And Ionians have the wild untamed hair and beards. So even without special origin stats, I do believe these unique character customizations would enhance the region pride too.
I think this would be really cool, maybe if humans were the only playable race, but like, I think it might be a little weird. We'll see what he has to say, but if like, they had all this options with humans and starting in different regions or being from different regions, you know, so it changes your cosmetic options and stuff. But what would you have? I feel like, would you have to do that with the other races too? Like, let's say they included Vastaya. It's like, you know, do the Freljordian Vastaya look a certain way? I mean, I guess they could do that with Vastaya also. It's just kind of a lot of work if you like make several playable races. They all can start from different origins, and each different origin has a different cosmetic set. You know what I mean? Like, not that they couldn't do that, but it's starting to get more and more complicated there. You know, it's like that might be too much. They might keep it simpler.
So that's what humans would be about. Pretty versatile and nothing too special in an RPG world. So now let's have a look at the more unique races. After humans, the second most spread out race are the Vastaya. As we mentioned in the last video, the Vastaya are a race that came to be after humans
also another wide open race
started mating with magical animals. But the thing is, depending on where they are from, there are loads of different kinds of Vastaya. From cat boys to fox girls to lizard girls.
I didn't know
in
Set
fact,
was a
here's
cat
a family
boy.
tree of all the Vastayan tribes.
Oh
and
shit,
even
this is pretty cool. My beloved Jewel of Ionia. I don't know what any of these things are. I wish I did, but this is really cool, actually. That would be pretty impressive if they did make Vastaya a playable race, and like there was like a huge variety of like crossovers. Although, let's be honest, like then you're like really just gonna stereotype yourself as like a furry kind of thing. I mean, I don't know. I probably overestimate how like important or like I don't know how much of like a meme that is. People probably wouldn't care that much. Obviously, a lot of people would love it, but a lot of people might hate that shit. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of variability here, though, for sure.
Doesn't
A lot of
cover all of
variety.
them.
I
And
mean,
this is where Riot can pull off something genius. As I said, this world already has set rules. So it would be very difficult to introduce a brand new race into this universe.
unless they're from the new continent,
However, it is going to be
maybe.
very easy to just make up a new Vastayan tribe. So I propose that Riot doesn't make the Vastaya as a playable race overall, but instead it
Yeah,
would be
certain
cool if
ones.
Riot let the specific tribes to be playable races.
Okay.
This would leave the door open for them to introduce new playable races later down the line.
Yeah.
If they cross off all the Vastaya at once, they kinda shoot themselves in the foot. But I know, here I go mumbling
Yeah,
about
I
how
think
the
that's too
world
much at
works
once.
again. So let's have a look at some of the specific tribes. When I say Vastaya, most people think of Ari. She comes from the Vasani that look like foxes. Although her tribe is mostly gone, the lore can justify new members to be found, so they can be playable. The Kilash tribe...
I don't know, dude. I feel like they can't make like Fox, specifically Fox Vastaya. They can't make them like a playable race, dude. I think that'd be weird. Like Ari's like kind of like I feel like special. He also said like her tribe is gone. I feel like that'd be weird if you just saw like every player fucking playing, you know, Fox Vastayas. Like it would make Ari seem like not special necessarily.
Type comes from the jungles between Shurima and Ishtal. These lion-like people are known for hunting dangerous beasts, and they take great pride in trophy collecting. It's the average mount collector. The Shimon tribe are monkey-like people from Ionia. While their older members are very wise, their younger members can be very goofy. The Otrani come from Mount Targon, resembling the classic goat people. Their hobbies are taking care of the stellar corn.
Is Soraka
The
one of these?
Lowland
Maybe.
tribe are Ionians who resemble bird people. This tribe likes to combine the art of dancing with lethal assassinations. The Uvikat are something close to lizards, though they do have the ability
Like
to
reptiles?
shapeshift. Out of all of the other tribes, these are the closest to their pure blood ancestors. And we also technically have the Marai, the fish people whom I doubt are going to be playable. Imagine modeling boots for them. Now, these were the more pure blood tribes, but there are many more Vastaya who don't fit any of these. For example, Set has an Ionian Vastayan mother and a Noxian human father, so he doesn't really have a tribe. Long story short, the Vastaya are an incredibly versatile race and Riot can use them in a million different ways. This is where they can really go wild.
That's fair. I mean, honestly, it seems like there's already plenty of like available races if you just do human and Vastaya as your two options.
But that's it for the Vastaya. So now,
What else we got,
let's
though?
have a look at the
Other than
third
Yordles.
most popular race, the Yordles.
Yeah.
These are the classic RPG tiny people. In League of Legends, people either adore them or hate them, there is no in-between. Kinda like those guys. But not those guys, everyone hates them. There is no doubt in my mind that Yordles will be playable, even though they have an interesting catch. You see, unlike all the other races on Runeterra, Yordles are immortal. They are essentially modes of magic that come from a hidden magical realm known as Bandle City. And because they are made of magical essence, when they die, we don't really know what happens. But we assume they return to the Bandle City and there they respawn. With that said, the lore suggests that maybe Yordles can die, but they just can't die of old age. But let's ignore that, that's a massive rabbit hole. So, you know, when it comes to gameplay, at least corpse running is going to make sense for them. Now, because Yordles are immortal, in most cases they are always happy and cheerful. Even their home realm is very colorful because of that. But then there is also Vex, a Yordle champion who has recently been added into League of Legends, who gives Yordles an interesting perspective. You see, unlike all the other Yordles, Vex hates living. She
Oh
hates the
no.
bright colors and the cheerfulness. You know, it's the average League player. So Vex is constantly in deep depression and agony. All she wishes for is to leave this world, but she can't, because Yordles can't die.
Oh shit.
Anyway, just
I
like
didn't know
all the
this.
other races,
That's pretty cool.
Yordles can be found all around Runeterra. There is Poppy in Demacia, Kled in Noxus, Kennen in Ionia, Rumble in Shurima, and so on. But now, so far we have
Say
only
Rumble
covered
in
the races
Shurima?
which I'm pretty sure will launch with the MMO. The humans, the Vastaya, and the Yordles are the core of this world. So now we are diving into the races that still exist in this universe. But it's going to be up to Riot if they make them playable.
Yordles does seem pretty likely, and they're super common. There's so many Yordle champions, and they're all different kinds. Some of them have like, some of them are hairless, and you know, like people. You know what I mean? And they just have like skin. Some of them are like furry and shit. There seems to be a lot of variations, so that would be an easy class. And you know, like a lot of people would want to play it. So I agree. I think that's probably pretty likely.
First of all, there are the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs are different from the Vastaya because they don't have magical ancestors. They are just a standalone race.
Okay.
Originally,
Alistar,
the Minotaurs
maybe?
controlled the mountains south of Noxus. But because Noxus is Noxus, soon they absorbed the Minotaurs into their empire. With that said, some Minotaurs fled the tyranny of Noxus and they joined the other regions. A great example is Kryl, the Minotaur fighting in the elite armies of Demacia.
Who are these people?
And yes, the Minotaurs also
Holy
have
shit.
the stereotypical sexy female version in this universe, so they
of
can
course.
easily be turned into a playable race. Next, in Bilgewater, there is an incredible amount of weird fishy people. A lot of these
Oh,
could
God.
be really cool playable races when Bilgewater gets its expansion.
These are not going to be
Although
races, dude.
modeling helmets
I don't
for a
think so.
hammerhead shark is going to be interesting. We also can't forget about the trolls.
It would be. I feel like I don't know, man. I feel like it would be disappointing if it was like only humans as a playable race, but like I wouldn't be surprised to be honest, because it just seems humans and like you said, maybe Vastaya, maybe Yordles. But even Yordles are like they're so much different as far as like a model goes and modeling armor for them and you know just mechanics and all that stuff. That I don't even know if I mean I just don't know, man. But I really don't think they're gonna go too crazy with like the racial spread, like variety here. I don't know. I just find it would be hard to keep it all canon and make sense. Yeah, I don't know. Like it would be a bit of a bummer for it to be only be humans, but at the same time, I feel like that might make for the better game, though. I don't know why I feel that way.
Previously, I showed you the ice trolls, but there are also the sand trolls. And here's an interesting fact for
Sand
League
troll.
veterans. We have never seen a sand troll, but because of Ezreal's adventures, we know they exist. They should be
Ooh.
around Icathia, which is where Jax is from.
Jax
who
is from
also
there.
has 3 fingers, by the way. So it is extremely likely that the mysterious Jax is a sand troll. Regardless, the
Ooh.
majority of
Yeah, that'd be
trolls are
sick.
united under Trundle, the self-proclaimed Troll King, who is fighting in the service of Lysandra, who is a baddie
Really?
even though she is morally right. So since the
Yes.
majority of the trolls are our enemies, I doubt they will be a playable race. Lastly, let's
agreed.
not forget that this universe also has Yetis.
That's the thing is they gotta reserve some stuff for like you know being enemies and stuff. It's like you can't make every race playable. So, you know what I mean, that's just how it was in Warcraft too. Like there actually was a lot of playable races, but there's also plenty of other shit that wasn't playable.
Fun fact, before everything got frozen, the Yeti civilization was very advanced. They even had their own technology based around magic. In fact, Willump, the Yeti Nunu is riding on, is a hologram from the Yeti technology. But
A
then, as the
hologram?
civilization disappeared, the Yetis went a bit more ferocious.
What?
So no, they won't be playable either. But that's pretty much it for the races. As I mentioned, there aren't too many different kinds. But that's because Riot is avoiding mimicking other RPGs.
Yeah.
That's why there are no dwarves or elves here.
Yeah, again, that's where it's like this universe has never been about having like all these different races. You know, there are some like there's a lot of like unique characters that are like blur the lines between like a new race and like they're part human or whatever, like with the Vastaya. But I've always felt like League of Legends has always been a largely like human universe kind of. Again, obviously there's always been like a lot of exceptions to that rule, but it's not like we started off with like an even amount of like humans, orcs, elves, dwarves, like all your typical shit. It was always like I feel like base human world and then some magical creatures and other stuff. And of course it's gone wild since its beginning, but um that's just why I think it would make sense if they just only let you roll it as human. There's still so much variety you can be as human and stuff, but like I don't think they're gonna do a lot of different playable races, even if they do more than human. But imagine if you only have a few, like you said, let's say they do human, Vastaya, and Yordle. How many are really gonna play humans? You know what I mean? Most people are gonna want to opt for like the more fantasy, the cooler race or whatever, right? But I mean, I'd totally be down to be human, but I don't know. I just really think playing as a human only just makes the most sense to me because then you can still have people from all kinds of different regions, different backgrounds, and all that. There's still so much variety you can do. That's what makes the most sense to me.
Runeterra is simply trying to be unique in every way, and so far, it is working. Now, I also have seen some people asking if Darkin will be playable.
No shot.
To which I have to say, that's like asking if you can play as a god. The Darkin are a corrupted version of the Ascended God Warriors. A single Darkin can annihilate an army of 1,000. In fact, the Darkin known as Aatrox is the only being in existence that managed to kill a celestial god. He stabbed someone wielding the power of the Aspect of War so hard, the Aspect of War died. So no, I don't think Darkin will be playable.
He's talking about Pantheon, right? So in like the current lore, is Pantheon dead? Killed by Aatrox? That's wild. I need to start reading this shit, dude. Is there some graphic novels or something?
Anyway, with all the races covered, assuming Riot is going to use the Origin system, this is what the playable races could look like.
Dude, yeah, and this would also see the Minotaur, like, I see what he means, like, lore-wise, maybe, I guess, would make sense. I trust him on that, but no one knows any Minotaurs. And he didn't even mention Alistar or show a picture, so is he even a Minotaur? It would make sense, but, maybe he's not. And it's just like, the only one that would really make sense, I feel like, is Yordle, because there's a lot of Yordles in League of Legends. I don't really know how many. Oh, there was I guess he listed a lot of playable Vastaya. But, I mean, yeah, if you look here, look, what's the only thing that checks off the whole column is human. He's definitely right. I think it's possible that they do human Vastaya Yordle. I find Minotaur very unlikely, but I also think there's a good chance it's just human.
Humans are versatile, they are everywhere, there is not much to mention there. When it comes to the Vastaya, the common tribes can easily appear in Noxus, Piltover and Bilgewater. These are the regions open to everyone. On the other side, the Vastaya are closely linked to spiritual magic, so you will hardly find one in Demacia, since it is a firmly anti-magic region. And somehow, not many Vastaya were ever mentioned in the Freljord, so Riot doesn't have to force them there.
And he did like make a good point on the last video that Valoran, the upper main continent is likely to be the starting place. So if Vastaya can't even make sense in 2 of the 3 main regions, Freljord and Demacia on Valoran, then, would they make that a playable race?
But then we have Shurima, Ionia and Targon. Assuming these would be saved for expansions, they could be used to introduce new playable races. Since I doubt all the newcomers remember the names, the Kilash, Lothlan and Otrani are the Lion People, Bird People and Goat People. When it comes to the Yordles, as I mentioned, they can originate from anywhere, but they do avoid the Freljord and Targon because of the harsh climates. And yes, I know there were some prehistoric Yordles in the Freljord, but after it got covered in ice, they disappeared. And lastly, the Minotaurs can be found in Demacia and Noxus. But it does make sense for some of them to flee to the Freljord, and others to travel to Ionia during the invasion. With all of this said, remember, this is just my decently educated opinion, since the races are pretty much mixed up all over Runeterra. Riot could also lift the limitations and let every race start in every region, and I would be fine with that. Some story would be wonky, but
Okay.
it wouldn't be anything horrible. Although I still believe some racial exclusivity helps the feeling of RPGs. So, all of this is still only the first half of the video. If you wanna take a break and do your business without washing your hands, now's your chance. This program will continue in 5 seconds.
In that last screenshot, there was Soraka there looking at like the constellation of Pantheon. So I think Soraka is one of these, whatever you call them, the goat people. I love how he did this because he knows people are going to react to this video.
Okay, so far we only covered the races, which was definitely still the easy part. The much more difficult part are going to be the classes.
Okay, I'm really curious what he's going to say here. This is what I've been more interested in because there's, again, I don't think there's going to be a lot of playable races, I feel like. But classes is going to be a big thing. My only idea I have right now is that they'll do the ones that are from the actual client. What is it? I think it's Assassin, Marksman, Mage, Tank, Fighter, and like Support or something like that. 6. They could easily do that. They could easily do, you know, those 6 classes, but maybe he has a different idea.
This is where Riot is facing a great challenge. Partially, it's because there are inherently no wrong answers when it comes to designing a class system. You can really make anything work if you put some thought into it. But more than that, Riot is challenged by the setting itself. League of Legends currently has over 160 different champions. They each have unique abilities and together they can define about 40 different classes. I counted them myself. From the
40? So he tried to group them into 40 classes. So that's an average of like a little over 3, I guess, or maybe not a little, like yeah, somewhere between 3 and 4 champions per class. I would love to see this list of his.
these, Riot has to pick only a handful to be playable, which means the majority of the classes won't make it in, and people who love those classes will be disappointed. Thankfully, I'm not a designer, so instead of trying to figure out how to make this work, I'm going to show you all the cool, unique classes this universe has.
Wow, I think he's about to explain this whole like little breakdown he's made. That's pretty cool. I will say, what if they approach that they do something? They're definitely gonna like probably I think make an MMO that's based a lot on previous MMOs, and they're gonna like adapt that formula and try and, you know, make it better. But they could also, I'm sure they'll also try and do something new, you know, in their own way or whatever, right? Like their own new, fresh idea to an MMO. And what if they actually release new classes like more frequently than a normal MMO would, you know, like more than just like every other expansion, every like 5 years and shit? What if like in League, they've managed to be able to drop new champions like constantly? It definitely won't be as often as League, of course, but what if they like drop a new class like twice a year or something like that? You know what I mean? Like, and they just end up over time with like a huge roster of classes. Like they've managed to basically pull that off and balance that in League. So who says they can't do that in an MMO? You know, maybe they'll end up with like a 30 class roster, you know, or something like that, or more. Who knows? Like years in, you know what I mean? Over time, they did it with League, man. They could do it with an MMO. Who knows?
And again, because region pride is a big part of this universe, you'll see that some of these are tied to specific regions.
What is this animation from?
That one is different in every single region. So let's start with that. The warriors in this universe provide a unique challenge on top of the already difficult decisions. It's because in every region, the fantasy of a warrior is represented by something else. In Demacia, it is the Dauntless Vanguard. These are the classic knights in shiny armor pursuing justice. In Noxus, the traditional warrior would be part of the Trifarian Legion, which is a rank you can achieve after killing your best sparring friend in combat. These guys rarely use shields. In Shurima, the classic warrior is the warrior of the Golden Army. These are fighting for the glory of the Shuriman Emperor. In Piltover, you would have the Enforcers. Simply said, it's the cops. People will know these from Arcane.
I will say, like, how do I put this? Like, he is kind of like, I said this in the last video, I think assuming that classes will be tied to like backgrounds and stuff. And, you know, like he explained earlier, how it's unlikely that they'll make like factions and stuff. They don't want to tie you to a certain faction, right? Or like, you know, allegiance in this game. If that's the case, why would they let you be like a cop in Piltover? Like, you're kind of required then to like, unless like every single person who rolls this character is like has a story of like becoming like, you know, a converted like former cop, but now you've changed and like you're against the fucking, you know, uh whatever, you're against the fucking oppressive, you know, Piltover goddamn police force or something. You know, I find it more likely that I mean, like I feel like League is a game, League of Legends is a game of like individual champions with all their own unique stories and all that, right? And like they don't, I guess a lot of them do have allegiances to places, but everyone's an individual. And I feel like they'll probably try to take that concept as well with this game with the MMO if I could imagine, because you know, I think like they're gonna want players to not really like you can obviously be from somewhere, but you're not gonna be a part of some specific force or faction or army or vanguard or whatever. You know what I mean? I think they're gonna want people to feel like you're your own like little unique hero with your own story. You're not like part of an army. Because that's how every League of Legends champion is. And I would think that the way they approach this is like they want players to feel like my player, you know, my character that I'm playing this MMO feels like their own unique champion. I know mechanically, gameplay wise, they're gonna have to obviously share a lot with other players, but like, um, as far as like their story goes, you know, that's what I would think they're gonna try to like help the player feel and experience, you know. And I don't see how like, you know, I don't think they would let you like roll as like, you know, a cop human from Piltover, or whatever, because you know, then you're just kind of like a part of the army, you know? You'd have to have some, like, unique story where you break off the police force, but if everyone had that story, it's like, it kind of falls.
But in a way, the Wardens are the melee warriors of Piltover. But then, in the Freljord, warriors are represented by the Berserks, either wielding axes or giant blades as they worship the primal god known as the Iron Boar. On Targon, we have the Warriors of Rakor, which are somewhat themed
Rakor.
after the classic Spartan armies. Then, in Ionia, the classic warrior is known as a Blade Master, with samurai-styled swords that have a rich history in this region. Also, there are the Vuju Blade Masters, which are on a totally different level. The
I do think some of these make sense as playable classes, by the way, not none of them, but definitely the Piltover cop one seems like, I don't know about that one, you know? These seem a little bit more open. And then, like, early on, they were like, "Oh, yeah, the Demacian Vanguard." I feel like that's a bit too specific to be a warrior. Like, why can't you just be an aspiring, uh, you know, warrior, you know, or adventurer or whatever who's, like, from Demacia, you know, grew up there? Why do you have to I feel like you don't have to be a part of, like, specifically the Demacian Vanguard, right? That could just be your home.
Vuju technique is so powerful it was forbidden from using it in combat. The TLDR version of the story is that when Noxus invaded Ionia, Master Yi obliterated entire Noxian legions on his own, before Noxians realized how overpowered he was and they nuked the town where the Vuju Blade Masters were trained. So now there is no more Vuju Blade Masters, just normal Blade Masters. And lastly,
Wait,
the
all of
common
them? So
warrior
isn't,
in
like, Master Yi's
Bilgewater
dead
would
or
be
something?
a brawler. You see, I just named 8 different kinds of warriors. How is Riot going to handle this? I don't know. They could just make one warrior class and then just have the players play out the fantasy while wearing cool armor sets. Or they could make it so that every origin has a different skin of the class. You know, all the abilities would be the same, they would be doing the same numbers, but when a Noxian swings a weapon, there is a bloody trail, and when an Iceborne Berserk swings a weapon, there is a frosty effect.
Yeah, that could be cool. They could
But
do it
again, this is
strictly
for Riot
cosmetic.
to figure out. Now I'm just going to show you all the unique and interesting classes from this universe. In Demacia, we have the Mage Seekers. These are the people who hunt down mages. They carry with them a stone disc called the Grey Mark. This is the tool that allows them to absorb magic. So this would be sort of an anti-magic class. There are also a lot of iconic Demacian scouts. Also, Demacia has a lot of stories about theaters and bards. But Demacia also brought spotlight onto the Sentinels. The Sentinels of Light
Ooh.
are people dedicated to fighting the undead. Because the
Ooh,
undead can't really be
yes.
killed with normal weapons. They use the relic stones that can be forged into any weapon. Be it a crossbow,
Wow.
a gun, a really big gun,
Okay.
or even a sword. Fun fact, in the
Hell yeah.
lore, the Sentinel guns don't have triggers. You have to will it to fire with every fiber of your body. So of
Jesus.
course, Lucian canonically fired it with his PP. Lastly, this will
What?
be unknown to even veteran League players, but Demacia put a really cool twist onto the Paladin class. You see, in League of Legends, when you play as Garen, his ultimate is to smite his enemies with a giant holy blade. This made people wonder, is Garen a mage?
Right, that's
In
exactly what I was wondering.
Demacia?
There's no way.
Actually, no. In the lore, Garen has never done anything even similar to this. And that's because there is something even cooler happening. Most people in Demacia pray to the aspect of justice, which they call the Winged Protector. That's
Oh,
why Demacia has a lot of angelic statues.
okay.
Coincidentally, the aspect of justice can also be found in League. It's Kale.
Kale?
So what's happening
Season
is that
aspect?
when Garen is casting his ultimate, it is not him magically creating a holy blade in the sky.
It's
It is
literally Kale?
actually the aspect of justice answering his call. So
Wow.
even though this universe doesn't really have a paladin class, which would be casting holy spells, this would be a really cool alternative. People who
I mean, that's basically the same thing as a paladin, is it not? Like, he's calling on his, like, holy god to do damage. That is a paladin class, sounds like to me. Like, Garen is a paladin. So you could totally do that. And Kale would be your fucking god, dude. That'd be sick.
worship the aspect of justice and let her answer their calls. Pretty cool, but now let's move on to Noxus. Noxians are one of
Paladin
the
all day.
only regions who harvest black powder, so they also have their own mercenaries with functional guns. In Noxus you can also
Well, the pirates have guns, right? So maybe they get it from Noxus?
find a lot of demonic cultists, so I would expect a warlock or a demon summoner, and they also have a few renowned assassin guilds. And the most unique of them all, Noxus also has a circle of hemomancers, people who follow Vladimir, a lord who used to be a hostage to the Darkin, and who have
There's so many classes he's listing here. There's no way it could possibly be all of these are in there. So I'm kind of with him where it's like, I do actually like this because he's not really postulating exactly what classes he think will be in the game. He's just basically laying out every possibility. Like, there's no way everything is going to be in here, but like, who knows? They could just pick and choose a few and be like, yeah, in this game, instead of having like a warlock, like your traditional warlock in WoW or something, they're going to be called hemomancers and like, you know? And again, like all these other ones that they leave out, they can just be in the future new class. And I guess yeah, he did name like 40, right? I mean, yeah, who knows, man? They could go for a high class count. They pulled it off in League.
eventually learned how to use their blood magic. So these people used the very same blood magic that shaped the Darkin. Then in Shurima, we may find arcane mages. These people follow Zerath, the
Nice.
most powerful mage on Runeterra, whose body has been reduced to nothing but arcane energy. I would honestly love to see this class in-game, because I
Yeah.
love the idea of having an Archon form on cooldown. Shurima
Wow.
also has some prophets who can open up tiny portals into the void and summon tiny void creatures. It would be sort of like
Yeah, will there
Warlock
be a
in
void
WoW.
class?
You know, use the power of the enemy against themselves. Then there are the sand shifters, people who can use the sand to create sand mirror images. And we can't forget about the chronomancers, people who use time magic
There's
in
more
a
than
lot
one?
of creative, interesting ways. Then, in Piltover, riding off of the success of Arcane, people will want to play as a Warden, which is a more elite version of the Enforcers. These would be equipped with sniper rifles and stun grenades. On the
Nice.
crafty side, there are also the Hextech Engineers. These are the people who can use science to allow them to wield
Dude, hell yeah,
magic
this would be
even if they
sick.
are not mages.
Hextech
And
Engineer,
separate from
dude.
them, there are also the Artificers. To them, anything from a powerful arm to blade legs should be possible. And down in Zone, I would love to see some kind of an alchemist who's using questionable
Yeah, of
drugs to
course.
help his allies.
Of course.
Next we go into the Freljord. Here we can find the
Oh,
Draklorn
please,
Inquisitors,
God.
which are Lysandra's followers with abilities themed around
Let
true
me
ice.
be. What do you say? A
Essentially,
fucking
Lysandra's Fjord. Here we can find the Draklorn Inquisitors, which
Draklorn?
are Lysandra's followers with abilities themed around true ice.
Oh God,
Essentially,
yeah.
these
Sign
would be
me up,
frost
baby.
battle mages. But perhaps the most iconic for the Freljord would be the Shamans.
Yeah.
These worship the animalistic primal gods
That'd be
of
really
the
cool.
Freljord, and all their abilities mimic
Like a
the
frost
primal
shaman.
gods, be it a bear, a fox, a mammoth, or a boar. Then
They could be
on
like a druid,
Targon,
maybe?
we would find a lot of people with celestial powers. You know, calling down stars and such. But there are also the Solari, who use the power of the sun to enhance their attacks. They also wear massive plated armor, so this would be the tank class. Or the
True.
Lunari, who use the power of the moon to stay in the shadows. This would be more of an assassin class.
Yes,
Besides
dude.
these, there are
Give me
also a
that.
lot of star callers around, and even draconic worshippers. Then in Ionia, besides the Vuju Blade Masters, which would be far too overpowered, some people choose to fight
I thought you said the Vuji Blade Masters were all dead.
without a blade. These would be the monks of Hirana. They channel the power of Ionian dragons to empower their limbs. And don't worry, they are a bit different from the traditional monks. They are far more badass. Think less Bruce Lee and more Dragon Ball. But of course, Ionia is also home to the Kinku ninjas.
The
Their
ninjas,
goal
right?
is to maintain balance in Ionia.
Ninja
This
would be
means
cool.
that when a spirit starts killing people, the ninjas go out and deal with the spirit. And when people start terrorizing the spirits, the ninjas go out and deal with the people. Most of these are your classic ninjas empowered with spiritual magic. But some are using the forbidden shadow technique. And while they surely look evil, just like anything in League of Legends, it's not really one-sided.
That's Zed.
These ninjas are simply using questionable techniques to protect their homeland. And honestly, the Shadow Ninjas are so iconic for Ionia, I really do believe they will be playable. Then we get
Really?
to Bilgewater. Besides all the things that you could do with pirates and monster hunters, the most iconic class of this place are the priests of Buru. The Buru worship the god of motion
yeah,
called
like a Laui.
Boros. While they are priests, they fight with full physical strength, while borrowing power from the god to empower themselves. Usually this means the god spawns tentacles to smack the enemies around. But they also have healing powers, so that would be a really cool support class. In Riot's RPG called Ruined King, you can play as Illaoi, the High Priestess of Nagake Boros. And there you can see all the attacks she can pull off. And this takes us to the last place, Ishtal, which will most likely be saved for an expansion. As I mentioned in the last video, Ishtal specializes in only one thing: elemental magic. So if elemental mages become a class, and they should, even in League elemental dragons are a core mechanic, they would come from Ishtal. But that's it for all the unique classes this universe has to offer.
God,
Funnily
so
enough,
many,
when I was
dude.
drafting all these classes,
Holy
I
shit.
realized a lot of them fall under specific categories.
Okay, cool, dude. That was. I'll let him explain this, but yeah, it's a lot of classes, dude. Like, I don't know what Riot's gonna do, man. There's so many possibilities. They could like go full send and do everything that he just named. They could plan for that in the future and just like, you know, start off with something simple and then expand to that. They could just keep it humans. Yeah, I don't fucking know, dude. There's there's so many.
So going with the skin idea for all the classes
Oh, this is
wouldn't
cool.
be too unreasonable. But developing so many artifacts, a lot of them fall.
I thought he was gonna like actually walk us through this a little bit. So these would be like the skins here on the left side, like the different you know, you would look like your background, right? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he's come up with 7 possible supports, or sorry, classes, and which each of those you would choose one of 8 like backgrounds, although you know, some are like tied to specific things. Warrior, Gunslinger, Hybrid, Mage, Summoner, Rogue Support. 7, that's 7. Yeah, I still feel like you could, you know, maybe just use the built-in League classes, you know, Tank, Fighter, or is it Brawler? Tank, Brawler, Support, Assassin, Mage, Marks. And I feel like you could probably rearrange this maybe to make it work in that, but maybe not. Either way, this is really cool. Like, he's done a lot of the work. Like, it's almost like he's like trying to design this shit himself, dude. Like, this is pretty well done. And yeah, I mean, here you go. Here's a fuckload of different combinations right here you could do.
Under specific categories. So going with the skin idea for all the classes wouldn't be too unreasonable. But developing so many artistic variations of the classes would be taxing.
Yes.
So overall, I believe Riot should not care about
dude.
disappointing some players for not including their favorite class.
They do put out a lot of fucking art, you know, new skins shit all the time. So like they definitely have a team used to doing that shit. But yeah, that'd be a fucking lot, dude. That many companies.
With so many options, it's going to happen anyway. Instead, pick a couple of classes that simply make sense for you. You know, a Blade Master here, an Arcane Mage there, and just have fun. Having fun during development usually translates into great experiences. And I hope I'm not pressuring anyone by stirring up hype. If anything, I'm just happy that people find these videos interesting. And all I'm doing is presenting information that Riot released over the past 10 years. I mean, I know the video is interesting because Asmon only paused 3 times and he said,
"That's fucking cool."
And
I like it a lot.
And
that's what the fuck? This is actually really cool. I didn't know any of this.
That to me marks a big success. Next time we are going to talk about all the already established raid bosses of this universe.
Nice.
Which is a very personal topic for me. You know, I am a father, my son is 2 years old. So by the time this MMO comes out, he's going to be just the right age to heal my raids.
That's fucking awesome. I love how he kind of like had to defend himself at the end of the video there a little bit, because I was actually thinking, like, when we looked up after we watched the last video, we were looking up release dates and stuff, and like really there is nothing out. All they've done is like they tweeted a couple years ago saying that they were hiring for this thing, and they specifically clarified just a few weeks ago in some article, I don't know who wrote it, but they said like they didn't want to like generate too much hype by announcing an MMO, so that's why they kind of like subtly did it on Twitter or whatever, just to generate hype for hiring, because they didn't want to like, you know, create too big of expectations or get people too hyped too early. And I was just thinking how like, and I'm sure this is why he did this, but his video has inadvertently created like so much hype for this game, and I'm sure Riot's like, guys, like, just, I'm glad you're hyped, but like this shit ain't coming out for a while. So it's almost him being like, look, I'm sorry, like Riot, if I like generate a bunch of hype and I'm getting people like all stirred up when like there's really like nothing to be shown or get hype about yet, because they're a long ways away and they still haven't a lot figured out. But yeah, then he's like, well, look, I'm just presenting information that's already out there. He's kind of like defending himself a little bit. I bet he got a little bit of heat. I mean, I don't know, maybe. I wouldn't be fucking surprised people are shitheads. But anyway, yeah, all right, that's fucking sick, dude. Great video, Necrit. Man, I gotta say, like, I'm one of the people who's like really fucking hype, and it's like I shouldn't be, dude, because like it's way too early, but I can't help it, man. I've always wanted to have like another MMO in my life that I've gotten, into, and it's been hard to find one sometimes. I have a lot of faith in Riot, and yeah, man, this is gonna be fucking cool. Great video, and needless to say, I'm pumped. I'm fucking pumped, boys. Let's go. Anyway, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and yeah, like and fucking subscribe, motherfuckers. Thank you. Peace.